Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up for Friday, July 5th, 2019, coming to you from a farm in Missouri. I'll give you a crop report. Some not so good news, and it all fits in with what I'm going to be doing with the business climate. You can hear some of the explosions going off in the background. This is a residual of 4th of July weekend. I'm going to talk about the economy because that's where all the fireworks are going to be coming from in the weeks and months to come. Now, I know you've been told that, wow, the economy is fantastic and it's doing great. And listen, with Donald Trump, it's doing way better than it would have done with Hillary Clinton. That's for sure. He repatriated all this money, all this cash from companies. Of course, it made the stock market go up because people poured it into their companies. He got drilling, all kinds of drilling done. We're energy independent or quasi-independent. We're a net energy exporter. I mean, there's a reason why he's doing that. Listen, he's been buying time. He really hasn't been going for the fix. He knows there has to be a fix. The man's not stupid, but he's been buying time. And this takes a while. I mean, you got a lot of dislocations and a lot of bizarre, malinvestment and stupid decisions, and you can't fix it in a couple of years. You just can't. And there are going to be some losers in all this. But the whole world seems like it's just trying to play the waiting game. Here is the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, warns slowdown is worsening and spreading as central banks run out of ammo. What they're talking about is that really all they can do is print money. There's not that much interest rates to cut. I mean, Donald Trump's have been dogging out Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, saying he raised rates too fast. Now, granted, Donald Trump did say during the campaign that they kept rates too low for too long, Janet Yellen. And he probably got into the White House and went, okay, we owe $20 trillion. No, Mr. President. No, Mr. President. We owe $21 trillion. There's this Dr. Mark Skidmore at Michigan State University, and according to according to Office of Inspector General reports for the DOD, Department of Defense, and HUD, Housing and Urban Development, there's a missing $21 trillion. So, they made it a national security issue. I kid you not. It sounds bizarre, totally weird, whatever, but everybody knows that everybody else is up to their neck in debt. Let's just talk about the G20. Any headlines come out of the G20 other than a picture of Donald Trump and the king of or crown prince of Saudi Arabia standing together in the middle? Anything come out of that? Any news? Did they tell you what they talked about? Maybe a reset, a debt reset. Everybody is up to here with debt. They're not paying back. They're not. It's not going to happen, folks. But people are in la-la land, just living their lives, and everything's okay, and there's never a downside for all. They hear the debt, a $22 trillion national debt, another $21 trillion missing. China's got $40 trillion in debt. Brazil's up to their neck in debt. Over in European Union, they've got mostly negative interest rate paying bonds. Christine Lagarde, who is the head of the IMF right now, is talking about how, negative interest rates are good. I'm going to have Gregory Mannarino, who's been calling me all week long with one zing, zip, boom, zing, boom, zing after another. And we're going to talk about the economy. This is a stretch out, a waiting game, to try to stretch it out. Nobody, if they wanted to fix this, they'd do something to the debt. They'd write off the debt. They'd give everybody haircuts. They would recapitalize. They would write off a bunch of bad debt. That's what happens to debt. And that's what happens in capitalism, but we really haven't had capitalism. If you believe in capitalism, you need to believe in bankruptcy. Warren Buffett, my secretary pays more taxes than I do. Yeah, Warren, you incompetent old man. Yes, she does, but you get multi-trillion-dollar bailouts. Hey, I bet you we save a lot of money cutting off people like you with multi-trillion-dollar bailouts as opposed to, raising the tax base on people. If we just stopped the multi-trillion-dollar bailouts for the very few, things would be doing a lot better. But that didn't happen. But I think it's going to happen. Another warning sign, global manufacturing PMI crashes to 7-year lows as new orders slump. So new orders are slumping. The economy is slowing down. The IMF is warning that they're out of ammunition, which means all they can really do is print money and take interest rates negative for more negative bonds. I believe we're up to $13 trillion of negative interest rates in the world. That's about, 25% of all the sovereign debt out there. I mean, we have a GDP, a global GDP of around 70 trillion. So what is that? I don't know. It's a pretty good chunk, 20% of the global GDP and negative interest rates. And here we have, and you can tell we're getting towards the end, trying to stretch it out. We're in the longest expansion in history. And this expansion did not come from inventing the internet, which we got a big expansion in the 90s. The internet was revolutionary. We did not have cold fusion power. We did not do anything that was, that earth-shaking and innovative other than print lots of money and buy lots of debt and do a lot of illegal market manipulation, intervention, give discounts to central banks, let them suppress everything, and nobody goes to jail for committing crimes. I mean, they just had, I just showed you, I think last week, a group of banks got together. They were suppressing, rates on gold and silver for 6 years, and they got a $25 million fine. At any rate, let's go on. Trump wants a much lower U.S. dollar. He's been saying that. Says that the USA should join the great currency manipulation game by devaluing the dollar. And that's how you know you're at the end. Not fixing, just trying to devalue and stay in the game as long as they can. For Donald Trump, listen, his game is simple. He wants to be reelected in 2020. I don't blame him for doing what he's doing. I don't know if he knew about the missing $21 trillion on top of the $20 trillion when he walked into office. I mean, the fraud is absolutely stunning. Tom Clancy couldn't make up a novel like this. You'd be laughed, out of his publisher's office. But yet it happened. And, plus he's been under constant attack with the whole framing. They framed him a hoax of unbelievable international proportions with tapping the NSA and foreign spies, agencies tapping the NSA, and everybody and his brother tapping the National Security Agency and unmasking people and trying to kick Trump out of office. Because, a lot of malfeasance happened. A lot of crime happened during all this. And here we have, the stock market is hitting record highs. This is by Michael Krieger. I've had him on the show before. He's a smart guy. I just haven't had him on, not because I don't like him. I do like him. I just have an embarrassment of bookings. Liberty Blitzkrieg, like Krieger.com. And he's saying that the stock market hits a new record high. But what's really going on? He says this. He doesn't know for sure, but, there's a high probability the economic cycle ended and started to turn down last September. And 2019's nominal highs in equities, May, July, are sending false signals about what's really going on. Yes, I think it's ending, and that's just a simple historical math problem. The longest expansion in history, then you were living on borrowed time, folks. And then how does this get resolved? Is money printing going to do it? They can't lower interest rates. Are we going to go into a world where you give somebody $100 and in 5 years or 10 years later they give you 90 back? I mean, is that going to work? I don't think so. That's what negative interest rates are. Christine Lagarde says, the world is do so great under negative interest rate. What happened to bankruptcy? What happened to default? That's what we're missing here. You had Ray Dalio write his manifesto, and you couldn't find the word bankruptcy anywhere. Nobody should take a hit. If you're rich, you shouldn't take a hit. If you're a little guy, you should lose your house, your car, your dog, your cat, your wife. You should lose everything if you're a little guy. But if you're a big guy, you can't let them fail. Can't let Warren Buffett fail. No. He's so important to society. Here we are in Missouri. We had a terrible time. It was raining when I set this table up. I figured I'd just go ahead and try it. But they've been raining. Fields wet, flooded. Mississippi River, Missouri River, some in the Ohio Valley as well, but certainly west of the Mississippi River, millions and millions of farm ground, as I predicted, would not dry out enough to plant it. Did they plant some of it as the water went down? Yes. Some got planted, but still, even if you had a little dry out, then we just had about an inch of rain, a cloudburst in this area. And then you have the most bizarre thing, corn. I mean, corn, listen, here's what the USDA says. And they really don't know because the last day for planting beans, I think, is the 5th. We're getting close. The insurance companies who insure crops may extend that, but I'm not. We're just about at the end. I mean, the historical time to stop planting beans is July 4th. Like the saying that your corn should be belt high by the 4th of July. Well, there's a lot of fields that look like this. Does this look belt high, folks? Okay. They got planted, and then they got gully washed, and they got too much rain, and the seeds floated off. They got planted again, and you got stuff like this. And then you got some fields that are like this. And this is almost, not quite, belt high, 5th of July. Almost. And then you got a few people that, wow, I hit it perfect, baby. I hit it. We're beyond belt high. We are really high. But this is the rarity. Finding crops, way high. This didn't have any ears on it yet, but this is going to do well. Listen, this is going to, crops like this are going to have a much harder time making it in the growing season than crops like this. What happens if we have a month in in August where we just don't get rain? Do you think this will do better than this? And the answer is yes. We also have a bunch of beans that are like this, okay? So the end of planting beans, the end of planting corn was, I believe, in May 31st. The end of planting beans was 4th of July, 5th of July. That's the end of planting beans. That's usually generally the end of planting beans. So they don't know what the damage is. A lot of farmers have told the USDA that you don't really know what the damage is. You don't know how stunted the crops got. You don't know how many fields that people have decided not to. There's one farmer with a couple hundred acres that's not planting anything. I got another friend of mine who got all of his in, and he had nice, ground that drained well. I had to replant a couple of times. He plants about 265 tillable acres. And I asked him, how much you have into this? He said, I got $40,000 in this, plus wear and tear, diesel fuel. That includes seed, fertilizer, the whole deal, weed spray. He got $40,000 in 265 acres. It's not, it's roughly $12,000 an acre to plant, $13,000. I mean, counting everything. Excuse me, not an acre, 100. There's you don't do quite as well as the insurance because, you make more money if you have a bigger crop. And they only pay you 70, depending on what you sign up for, 70 or 80%. But listen, the theme is simply this. We don't know how bad it's going to be. But it's the USDA is forecasting higher prices and lower yields. And then this is Michael Snyder, who I've been trying to get on the show here. Another smart guy, ran for Congress out west somewhere. I think he lives in Idaho. And he says devastating crop losses are literally happening all over the world, all over the globe. That's true. That crop losses are awful. And food is we have been the last several years, even though we've had some inflation and it's expensive going to the grocery store, but food has not gone crazy like the cost of college tuition or your property taxes or medical costs. Food is still relatively still more expensive. There's still more inflation there than 2%. But still, but you might see some real high prices in food costs coming up in the next year. You also have gold taking quite a pop. Bull Pony predicted that. He also predicted 2 market crashes in June, but we only got one right the first of the month, 3rd, 4th of the month. Came in through May and kept going until the Fed came up. So we're gonna lower interest rates. But he still thinks that the bigger crash comes in July, and with us at the end of the longest cycle in the world, there's a good chance he may be just right on the money. We'll see. The earthquake in California, which is 6.4, thank goodness it was 150 miles east of Los Angeles. But still, they've had swarms of earthquake over there. I had my friend Steve Quayle on, who's got a camera crew up in the Cascadias, and he thinks the big problem is all up and down the West Coast with earthquakes and volcanoes and the whole thing, that he's warning that we're getting much more active in terms of that. And that, of course, in terms of the economy, if we start having some big earthquakes or some big volcanoes going out in proximity to, Portland or Seattle, which I don't want, obviously that would be awful, but that could happen. And also earthquakes in Los Angeles and San Diego and San Francisco. That's just California alone has a little less than 40 million people. And so that could put the kibosh on things. But one of the last things I wanted to bring up, after the crops, is this executive order on the census. So they went you to court, and the Supreme Court, which is outrageous, didn't give us a good enough reason. Or really? Well, the president just says, well, I'm going to sign an executive order forcing a question on the census. Now we have a separation of power. Now we have a separation of power issue where the Supreme Court is supposed to be co-equal to the legislative, co-equal to the executive branch, that's the president. And now we have a setup that will be for the president of the United States to write an executive order. and that the Supreme Court couldn't just Bigfoot him and say, you didn't give us a good enough reason. He's the president. And so I think he's going that way, and why it's just ridiculous we can't ask, which has been asked many, many, many times over America's history, some sort of a question about citizenship. It's been done many times. It's not a newfangled thing. And I think that's what's going to happen. It'll set up a fight for a separation of powers issue, and I think the Supreme Court should affirm the president's powers to do that, just like the president's power to call an emergency and build a wall, and all kinds of others, executive powers that we give the president of the United States. We, the people, give the president of the United States. Sorry the farm report isn't better. Oh, this field behind me, just to let you know. A lot of fields look just like this. This is not a hay field. This is the wheat field. And there's a lot of fields that just didn't get planted. There's a lot of fields that just got planted yesterday or today in terms of beans. You can't plant corn after the 31st, as I told you a little while. But beans got planted up until I think the 5th of July. There might be some people that have a short-term seed and they won't go with insurance or go naked, or they have an 80-day seed instead of a 95 or 100-day seed. They have seeds, lengths of seeds, how long it takes them to grow. I don't know how well that will work, but listen, the theme out here in the country are higher prices and lower yields, lower crop yields. And I just wanted to let you know that, listen, you need to get ready. You need to get ready. I'm sure what Donald Trump would like to do is extend this out past the 2020 election. Lord knows, I'm for him for that. And I'll tell you why. Because we're already, $43 trillion in debt? What's another couple of trillion? You can't let the Marxist socialist like Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, they're drinking out of their toilets. A total lie. They're drinking out of their toilets. Or some other Democratic congresswoman saying we should put people in jail for criticizing members of Congress. They don't understand what the Constitution is. Well, actually they do. They just want mono-thinking, and they want totalitarian communist control. I mean, that's what these people are. Communists, globalists, Satanists. Socialist is like a light term for Marxist, communist, totalitarian people that would like to crush, godless people that would like to crush every Christian and everything God made. This is what we're fighting against: evil, pure evil, pure evil. Ocasio-Cortez, they're drinking out of the toilets. I mean, what did one person call the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, said that she was viciously dishonest. Well, I agree. I mean, you're not even close to the truth. They weren't drinking out of the toilets. It's totally crazy. Of course, she voted against giving any help to the border situation. I don't know how much the Mexicans are helping down there. Oh, we're sending thousands to the troops. Still, people are pouring across the border, but I digress. Listen, folks, you need to try to get ready as best you can. Make sure that you get ready, as I've always say, and stay ready. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. Number one and two, food and water. And other than that, you should not trust this economy. You should not trust this economy, and try to stay away from debt and try to pay off debt. With that, my saying that would get me fired on network TV, and that is, listen, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, and above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father, His Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit are all firmly in control.